Hey, folks, welcome to Hope Rescue Podcast. I'm Tim, and this is Kimberly, and we're going to talk about something interesting today. What are we going to talk about?
I don't know. Are we making it up as we go?
Yeah, I don't know. No, we actually been talking about all of the things, communication is such a critical part of
Yes,
marriage, right?
it sure is.
Is that right,
Makes
dear?
or breaks it.
Did I say that right?
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Words matter.
Words matter, and sometimes in our passion, we'll call it passion, in our passion, we state things or say things we wish we hadn't. So what we're going to talk about is the 10 things you should never say.
Right.
And we're going to relate it first to 10 things you should never say to your wife. Mm-hmm. So that's on us, guys. And then the 10 things you should never say to your husband.
Right.
That's on you, ladies. And then the 10 things we should never say to our children.
Right.
So that's on both
all of us,
fathers and mothers.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this, and we were talking about, okay, there are some stupid things I've said. Well, let's put it this way. I cannot confirm or deny that I may have said these things. Okay?
I was just going to say, when we were putting this list together, it definitely comes from years of experience of what not to do.
Yeah, we've got a lot of lists.
And things that we have actually learned from our mistakes, obviously, but also new tools that maybe we didn't see used in the way we were raised, but we've actually observed in some of our children as they're raising theirs, and they're
our parents.
And well, I just think it's real. There's a lot of we've talked about this before, corporal punishment. It seemed like in the generations raising us and before, you just took a spoon to someone's butt or something worse. You know,
start kicking their butt.
Right. So, and also in marriage, communication was not a focus. It was more of directives and responses. Yeah. And so for us, we want to do better, and we want our kids to be able to do better, and which they are.
Yeah.
And
coming out of a hierarchical history in the United States. That hierarchy, especially in a husband-wife relationship, that the husband is the boss, not just, as the Bible says, the head, which has to do with responsibility, not so much authority. But, there was this idea that men have more authority.
Right.
And some people thought men were smarter than women. And, those kinds of things. So coming out of that into a generation, especially baby boomers, beginning to rethink. Gen X really rethought that. And now the millennials and Gen Z, those are really rethinking some of those ideas. But it doesn't matter what your view is. Adult human beings need to have respect given to each other. So anyway, these were some things that I may or may not have said in the past. Number one, why don't you buy yourself a birthday present?
Right. I wasn't mad about it.
Oh, you're saying I said it.
Yeah. I'm just saying that for some women that would be offensive because depending on their love language, they like the idea that their husband is searching the world over for the perfect gift, which is very sweet and sentimental. And as through the years, we have sort of been like, what would you like for your birthday? And then it moved to, why don't you tell me what you want?
Here's the budget. Here's 50 cents. Do what you can with that. Anyway, I may or may have not have said that. Another thing I may or may not have said to my wife, you must be on your period.
Yeah, that's going to be a pop.
I those husbands that have on their calendars the menstrual cycle of their spouse,
smart.
It's either good or bad. Anyway, it depends on you. I may or may not have said that. And I may or may not have said, are you going to wear that? I know that may or may not have been said to me as well.
Right.
Or I may or may not have said,
this one's
she's
good.
looking at what I wrote down here. Do you have a mustache?
Listen,
there's that day where you go, times you've been married for a while and things have been let go.
You don't want to say
just
that.
a little longer.
Yeah.
Then you may notice a little facial
Now
hair.
that I'm in my mid to late 50s, is that a beard?
Yeah. It's menopause wreaks havoc on the body.
Yes.
Anyway, or this one, I may or may not have said, cramps are not that bad.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That is not a good thing
So
to
yeah,
say, men.
tips from
So,
Uncle Tim. Don't say those
We're going to
things.
do a 3-part series. It's going to be wife, husband, and child. But we
Right.
came up with some scriptures, and each week we'll share some scriptures and then get into the.
And these just lay a
10
good
things.
foundation
Yeah.
for why it's smart to be careful what you say. Proverbs 18:21 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits." In other words, you'll benefit the fruit of
Yeah, or if it's bad fruit,
right.
and whoever
Reap the consequences.
When you love the tongue, the speech is what that's saying. When you love the speech of somebody in your life, especially, for example, your parents, it matters what they
Right.
say.
Right.
When your spouse speaks to you, it matters.
Yeah.
And that's what he's saying. That speaker carries the power of death or life. So
Right.
the words matter.
Yes. And Proverbs 15:4, it says, "A gentle tongue," or those who use gentle speech, "is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit."
Yeah, that's kind of a new verse to me a little bit. I don't know that I've ever preached on that.
But it speaks to like the clarity of how the power of the words we speak can break someone's spirit.
Yeah, that's
Like it's just, it's
Yeah, I've
deadly.
seen it.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when I was a kid, not a kid, but a young father, and trying to figure out, how to do, parenting. And one of the people I heard that taught on this said, when you have a strong-willed child, you have to break their will. And I'm like, and I thought that was true. And what you do is you end up breaking their spirit. A wise professor of mine shared one time, he said, what you need to do, instead of breaking their spirit, you need to shape their will. Instead of breaking their
That's
will,
good.
shape their
Yeah, I
will,
like
because
that.
God made them with that strong will, wants
Yes.
them to be a leader.
Right.
So
Exactly.
here are the 10 things, and we'll kind of share these as we go through. The first one, I'll do the first one. You never or you always. Those kind of you statements, when you start with a you and you follow with a negative, it's a really a powerful way to destroy
Right.
the connection you have with your spouse. If you speak to your wife that way, gentlemen, you're going to, especially like generalizations,
Yes.
you're going to break the heart of your wife. And it's not because she's fragile.
Right.
We're all fragile. It's because she's a human being. You never, you always generalize. See
Yeah.
how that works for you.
Yes, like throwing that blanket statement goes to someone's identity of this is who I am. This is what I always do. And it's just, you're exaggerating in the moment, but that has consequences to someone's identity,
Yeah.
Specifically. So, and the second one is, why can't you be like, and then fill in the blank?
Your mother.
That's coming up. That's, you don't never want to do that. But and we all have been on the receiving end of having been compared to someone that you either admired or didn't even, necessarily admire. But what it immediately does is it diminishes you. It makes you feel like I'm not at their level, or my spouse wishes I was more like this person,
right,
and
right.
I'm falling short. And comparison, we know, is the ultimate thief of joy.
So think about this. There are people, we were just talking about this today. I have a tendency, I think everybody does, but I have a tendency to look inside myself and compare myself with others, or compare myself with my ideal of me. That's what we were talking about, is this is what I should be, this is what I am.
Perfectionism.
Yeah, but when someone that you love speaks into that, they give power to your insecurities and do damage to your soul.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
number 3, here's the one. Say this to your wife. See how it goes. When she's upset, say, calm down. We have said, we heard this from Mike Foster.
Yeah.
I heard him say this one time. He said, in the history of saying calm down, no one has ever calmed down when been told to calm down.
That's right.
Yeah, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I've been told to calm down by somebody in this podcast. I do need to calm down sometimes, but that's not the point. The point is that's probably not the best way to deal with
Right.
somebody who's frustrated, angry, or needs to calm down, but that's
Yeah.
not the way to get
An
them to calm
alternative
down.
would be to say something like, how can I help you through this? Or help me understand what I can do to help you through this, or something like that. Help me understand why you're feeling that way.
Anytime you're frustrated, when somebody commiserates with you, it's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
You don't need somebody that's going to say, "Hey, you're right. These people are worthless," or "Hey, go ahead, get all angry as you want." That's not what you need.
Yeah.
You need somebody to commiserate, but then help you to resolve the situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, number 4.
Number 4 is, I think we should get a divorce. Oh, that's dangerous.
I want to say I am very thankful you have never said that to me. And I've never said that to you.
Well, I feel
Have you ever thought it? Be honest.
not
No.
a chance.
Yeah.
You're my best thing. Now, I will say that there are times in everybody's marriage where you're like, you have those whiplash moments, like, are we going to make it through this? Or, those fears come. But even in those times of fear, when you feel like your foundation is shaking or whatever, it's so dangerous to enter into that conversation or throw it out there flippantly, because once it's said and spoken out loud, it becomes a part of a conversation that
Can't pull it back.
you can't pull it back. And inevitably, in people we've counseled, you come full circle, and potentially it becomes like this looming cloud. This almost self-fulfilling prophecy.
This
Yes,
threat,
right.
yeah.
And it's just so if you've been there and you've done it, just stop and
I
don't
think
go back.
I think it's important not to use any threats
Right.
in your relationship. Number 5, that's a woman's job. So, there are certain things that we do that are probably not gender role
Right.
normative. We do some things that are gender role normative. I do most of the working outside the home. I'm mostly the provider. At the same time, you do most of the cooking. When we have an event
Family
at our
planning.
house, you do that. When we do an event at our house, for whatever reason, I like cleaning up afterwards.
Yeah, and I'm not mad about that either.
Which is not I like to do the dishes and clean the counters and put things away and put all the leftovers, store them, and put them in packs for people to take them home. Anyway, there are some things. I take the trash out to the curb, and I like to be the one to take out the trash from the kitchen or the bathrooms to the trash cans during the week.
Yeah.
But oftentimes you do that.
Yeah.
So there are some gender
Yeah,
roles
I do,
that are
like,
not normal.
I take care of
for
my
us.
car stuff that needs to get done, unless I need a ride there or
Yeah,
whatever.
she gets her overalls on and
I check
puts
out-
the
check things out of my
under
car.
the car slider. She slides under there, changes the Earl.
So-
Get that Earl changed.
So what's key in that, though, is that we have an understanding of what's worked best for us with our schedules, and so we're not fighting against each other. We've actually worked out a system that seems to function well for us. And what's key about that is that we didn't go into our marriage with, this is what women do, that's a woman's job, or this is a man's job. You actually have to be very specific and individual depending on your situation as a family. But what's important is that you're communicating about it and negotiating that, and you're mutually agreeing upon what you negotiate on.
Where does that come from? Part of that, or most of it, comes from what's called family of origin.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you talk about family of origin, Paul and Sharon Adams, Kimberly's parents, had certain functionality, and they were gender specific.
And they
More so
stayed
than
in those
ours.
lanes. They stayed hard.
We're pretty gender specific, but there are things we cross over. They really stayed in those. My parents very much were into those. That generation, was more that way. But here's the most important thing to do. And we talked about this in preparation for the podcast. We said, the best advice we can give to you when you talk about family of origin issues, like what did your family do, your family you grew up in, and how does that impact the way you see marriage? the best thing for you to do is before you're married is sit down and write those down and then negotiate those. If you didn't do that before you were married, it's probably wise to sit down and have one big discussion about it and then try to resolve those things. What are you comfortable with? Yard work versus, carpentry around the house, or, if I fix something, Kimberly calls me Mr. Fix-It. And the reason she calls me that is, quite frankly, because I called myself that.
Yeah.
But I started that. But anyway, the neat thing about it is Kimberly also fixes things.
I like to fix
things. And
things.
she rolls up her sleeves and does things. So figure that out and write it down so that there is an understanding of what the expectation is.
And I would also say to that, be willing to circle back and renegotiate when seasons change in life, because sometimes someone will become unemployed, either a spouse or health issues arise, but be willing to negotiate that ongoing. So, okay. And so our next one is the power of words. Really important, power of words.
Is this my turn or your turn?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought, it's mine, because
Go.
you said the woman's job.
Yeah. Sure enough.
Yeah. So number 6 is labeling, saying things like, you are bipolar, or you're a narcissist, or any other technical psychological label and term on your spouse. Now, they may have been identified with that, and they may self-identify as that. But it's not helpful to, in a negative way, use those words as weapons.
Well, think about if your wife, and we're talking about what to say to your wife, if your wife has been diagnosed with a bipolar disorder, you saying that is not helpful.
Right.
You commiserating with that pendulum swing of manic state versus depressive state. If you're willing to do that, you're going to be helpful. If you label them, remember, we're not therapists, but if they have been labeled, be sensitive. If they've not been labeled, don't use those terms at all, ever. The number 7.
Number 7 is, you are a terrible mother. Ooh. Or saying, I wish you were more like my mother. That's the other side of the coin, is that, when you're told you're a terrible mother, you automatically think, well, it's because they're comparing me to their mom who they think is perfect or whatever. Or it's deadly to say, I wish you were more like my mother. But again, that goes back to the comparison thing. But when you speak to a woman's heart like that and say she's a terrible mother, and she may be struggling, because honestly, each one of us have. It's a tough job. And depending on what kind of tools you were given growing up, and we all have had challenges with the way we've been raised. You could be struggling more than others, but it doesn't help for your spouse to say you're a terrible mother.
Yeah, here's one of the things that's been interesting over the years. A man gets up who's a pastor, and it's Mother's Day, and he preaches on Proverbs 31. And he Proverbs 31, this ideal woman. And when you listen to those character traits and those behaviors, you go, who is that?
Who do we even know like that?
Nobody's like that. And if they were, who'd want to be around them? They're too perfect.
Yeah.
Anyway, and you get this man saying this, and the reality is that nobody can meet that standard. And I want to say to the mothers, and Kimberly could probably say this better, but I want to say to the mothers, listen, every one of you have had times where you thought, I cannot deal with this child. This child is driving me crazy.
Yeah.
I wish I wasn't this child's mother. That may have run through your mind, maybe even more extreme. Your point should be to say, it's normal to struggle, and you are, what your actions are what's really driving this. And so you do need a break. You do need times of refreshing. And for some man, so let me speak to the fathers, husbands, when you speak to your wife that way, you devastate her in maybe one of the most sensitive and definitely the most important
tender
aspect of her life.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, let me get number 8. what do you do all day? I have never said that, and I don't think I've ever thought that.
Let me tell you something. For those of you out there, for you gals who have had husbands say that, I need you to just do a little bit of homework for me.
Punch 'em.
No, actually start writing down from the moment you wake up all of the things that you do in a day. And so that they can understand, or better yet, go on a trip for a day or 2 days and let them experience what you do all day. And because even when I've taken trips, overnight situations or a couple days at a time, the home does not run the same.
Yeah, I can tell you when Kimberly was gone, we have 5 at home at that time. We had 5 at home, and I'm like a little overwhelmed. And I'd have to take time off work to do it, of course.
Yeah.
Getting the kids to school, getting everything done. But Kimberly has a routine, very routine. She's got, her devotions in the morning before anybody gets up. Then she reads the kids. And I know the routine. It's very important not to be critical of each other. That is a terrible state.
Yeah.
Number 9.
Yeah. Number 9 is you're making a big deal out of this.
Don't say that, guys.
No, that instantly diminishes what is obviously important to your spouse.
Yeah.
And so if it's a big deal to your spouse, it needs to be valued as an important topic, at least to discuss and to negotiate as well.
So here's the last one. Why don't you control, quote, your kids? There's
when they're bad, they're yours. When they're good, they're mine, or vice versa.
Yeah, and they're never ours, except at weddings and
yes.
But I remember my dad saying that to my mom, and it was just devastating. It's like their failures are your responsibility. Their successes need to be. We're going to run through a whole bunch of things to say to your
good
in
things
just a few
to
minutes.
say. Yeah.
I'm so thankful you married me. Go ahead.
I love it when these are, by the way, all things that he says to me.
Yeah.
So when he wrote this list, I kept saying, "You say that, you say that, you say that." Another thing is, I'm lucky to have you in my life.
That's not to say you're so insecure that you couldn't get anybody, but
No.
I'm lucky to have you. You're my best thing. Our daughter Shara would say, "You're my best thing," and she'd say it to different people and so forth. And I love that, and I'd say that. And her little boy, I'm starting to say that to our grandson Elijah. You're my best thing.
Yeah, that's so sweet.
He's my little buddy.
Another thing you can say is, "My life is better because of you," and then think of some ways and actually express that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You always take such good care of our family, which you do. You do that. You are the best. Not you're just my best thing, but you are the best.
Yeah.
Number 7.
You're beautiful.
That's a good one.
Very simple, very sweet.
I don't think we say this enough, guys. I think we need to let our wives know, especially women that are having children or have had children or pregnant or going through menopause or aging, and you're very attracted to your wife, and you're like, if you don't tell her that, she's probably going to believe the lies she might be telling herself.
Oh, for sure.
So
for sure.
let her know how attractive you find her. Number 9, you are, where I said that, how did I ever get you?
Yeah.
I say that to you all the time.
You do.
I am very thankful.
And then another one, 12 is, I guess it would be 11. We got our numbers mixed up here, but I'm proud to be with you.
Yeah.
Another one is that you do all the time is thanks for the meal. That means so much.
Yeah, it's important. Our kids say that.
They do.
They used to say when we'd go out to dinner, they'd go, "Hey, thanks, Dad." And it's really important to be grateful.
It is.
And for that to be passed on. One that is really important, guys, say this to your wife on a regular basis. Make it your reality and say it. And that is, I choose you.
Yeah.
And I choose you every day.
That's so powerful. Another one is you're an amazing mother. Just those words of affirmation can make her feel like you put some gasoline in the tank.
Yeah. I heard, I've heard people say you should never say this. I think a person that never says this next one makes a huge mistake. And that is, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We need to say that on a regular basis. Well, these are our ideas of things you should never say to your wife, things you should say to your wife. Next week, we're going to talk about things you should not say to your husband. And then we'll talk about kids the week after that.
Sounds
okay?
good.
All right. Hey, thanks for listening to Hope Rescue Podcast. If you don't know where we are, we're at hoperescuepodcast.org, hoperescuepodcast.org. Invite your friends to come and join us. We've got a couple of hundred podcasts and great series that we've done. You can go and look at all of those at our website. God bless you. If you're listening to this audio, it's also on video. You can get those at hoperescuepodcast.org. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.